strategic awareness. So let's talk a little bit about the awareness. Okay, so let me set context and we'll see how far we can get. So the strategy section, we defined like an intro to strategy, learning strategy, career strategy, and business strategy. We're in the tail end of business strategy parts. And mostly the reason that I focus on awareness and trends is basically on this idea of what strategy is. Strategy is having a good mental model of reality, where things are today, having a vision of where things are going in the future, having a plan and a policy. So I've just focused on the first two because those are the more generalizable features, and then the planning and policy making is kind of really up to you to decide. And we have some other ideas here. So reality and vision. The first part is reality, having awareness of what is going on around you, right? So first of all, deciding to ignore some things because it's possible to get overwhelmed. So having a distinction between a circle of concern versus a circle of influence. Then we talked about a tech radar approach, adopt, trial, assess, and hold. I recently actually got quite a bit of good feedback about a talk that I did on the third age of JavaScript, where I did something similar. Let me show you what I did. So essentially what I did was come up with, sorry, let me show you the slides. I did exactly this levels of concern thing for a talk. And that was essentially like, here you're adopt, here's trial, here's assess, and here's hold, something like that, you know. And that for people is actually a really good way to organize a bunch of different technology that is on your radar, and just being able to understand what is something that you should be on top of. So for example, if your standard for adopt is that you need to know everything that's going on in that field, that means you need to subscribe to all the newsletters, go to all the conferences, know all the major movers in that project, and understand the source code, that kind of thing. Whereas trial, maybe like you've done some projects. Assess is you haven't done any projects, but you've read the basic documents, like the intro talk, the first few pages of the docs. And then hold is stuff that you just decided to completely ignore, right? So like just establishing different standards and different levels, and just filing each technology under those levels, and being able to pick up on, okay, there's this new development that has changed this technology from this level to this level, and what you need to do to upgrade your understanding of that technology based on that. Is that presentation in my post? Yes, it is. So let me share the link, and you can see both the talk, which right now it's a full live stream. So I did do a timestamp, so it's right there. But you can also see the slide deck as well, and also it was picked up on the news stack, so you can read the sort of journalist interpretation of that. I also did a podcast recording on it on JS Party, so you can also see that version of it. It really got quite a lot of attention for the amount of work that I put into it. And I think it's just basically based on people really liking this kind of mental model for tracking stuff, because everyone's too busy to figure out what to pay attention to, right? So if you just tell them, like, here's where I put everything today, they at least have a basis of whether or not to agree or disagree with you. There's a machine learning version of this. And basically, like inside of the chapter, I talk a little bit about how to establish different levels for assessing technology. Okay, and then we talked about the adoption curve, right? Where whether you want to be an innovator, you want to be an early adopter, or you want to be all the way down to late majority or laggards. In some parts of your life, you're going to want to be an innovator super early. In other parts of your life, early adopters, other parts of your life, you want to be very conservative and be a late majority. Laggards, I tend to treat laggards as basically people who adopt the technology unwillingly, like they have no choice, because even though they don't like it, they have to, just as an industry standard or whatever. So you'll never really choose to be a laggard. You just will adopt it out of lack of choice. So most of the time you'll be spending here. A lot of times you'll be on the early part, but being too early as well is going to be very noisy for you. You're going to expend a lot of effort on technologies that end up not working out, which is, Jose shared a little bit of experience in previous times. about being too early. So, and it's really it can be quite painful when done wrong or done too much. Understanding the tech value chain is also really important, and basically combining the Rogers curve with the hype cycle basically gets you some combination of the ability to decide on what where a certain technology is within, where a certain technology is within each of these curves. They all definitely overlap in ideas, and I really like this one. The surge cycle is basically the first. If you integrate the area under the curve of the hype cycle, you get the adoption cycle. And the VCs really like this one, because basically what that means, what this tends to mean, is that instead of all these 5 sections, really there's only two stages you care about, which is the installation stage and the adoption deployment stage. Let me see. So yeah, something I'll just paste this in for you, because I think that this is extremely influential in the VC field. AVC is Fred Wilson's blog, who is one of the initial investors in a lot of the large crypto startups that you know today. And then finally, when you sort of combine a bunch of these sort of early adoption curves with a concept of the value chain, which is like how close are you to the user versus how close are you to the infrastructure, you get something like a Wardley map, which we've talked about before in previous conversations. But I personally haven't found myself being too effective about this, apart from the fact that I think that every single time you change stage in terms of your commoditization. In other words, like the genesis stage is taking something from 0 to 1, like really inventing something. The second stage is everyone custom building their own implementation of whatever the thing is. The third stage is when you can buy off the shelf from a vendor or a small set of vendors. And the fourth stage is it's so commoditized, you don't even have a brand name to it. You just kind of think about it as a tool, as a utility that everybody should have. And every time it changes form like that, there's a lot of money to be made, and it simplifies quite a bit for the mass market to adopt. The other thing to take note of is because of the law of complements, which is that the value of the increases in the supply of one technology drops the unit price of that technology, but it also causes increase in the value of related technologies. So in other words, if one part of your value chain is commoditizing rapidly, it means parts above and below it are probably going to be more valuable. And so you want to bet on those, and you want to be best friends with everything that's commoditizing very quickly. So that, for example, might have been the nullify hypothesis, which is there's a lot of front-end frameworks that are all commoditizing. Let's just be best friends with all of them, because them commoditizing themselves towards something that's a commodity makes us more valuable as the preferred provider for them. Yeah, that's where commoditizing complement comes from. I also call this the strategy letter 5. This is the Joe Spolsky, very, 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 very famous blog post about this. So these are basic, like, I wouldn't even call this advanced readings in tech strategy. I just think, like, if anyone claims to know anything about tech strategy, this is just required reading. You should know this. So I'm happy to discuss it with you, especially if you haven't come across them before. But this is a very, very foundational course in the history of tech strategy understanding as it up till, let's say, maybe about 5-10 years ago. That's when about Wardley mapping started becoming popular. And then there's even more advanced stuff which we talked about, for example, in other chapters. But this is sort of the more cohesive, established historical understanding of strategy. There's a bit of systems thinking stuff, which is very vaguely defined. I gave my best crack at it here, as well as we talked about it in the first principles chapter. I really like, as a foundational place to start, the 12 leverage points essay, which is that designing a system basically involves understanding which parts of the paradigms you're really affecting. Like, are you affecting basic constants, or are you affecting how the rules change over time? And it's really mind blowing to read about. And I feel like I need a bunch of diagrams to illustrate it. I think Will has actually some systems thinking stuff. Okay. So yeah, I do recommend this is systems thinking as applied to engineering management, and you can, and he has a bunch of writings about just how to do this, which I just think is it gets very theoretical unless it's literally your job to work in systems, which most of you will want to do. Chad, you had a question.
You might have actually answered this already, but you can actually use this kind of like not necessarily your day to day, but
Exactly.
On the job for making decisions on what is important, what is not important.
Yes.
Oh, okay, yeah.
You should.
I figured you were saying that as soon as I put my hand up.
In fact, that is the difference between we talk about the difference between strategies and tactics, right? So we're finishing up the strategy chapter. Principles are stuff that we just have always on. Strategies are ways in which we make big one-off decisions that are probably irreversible or less reversible. And then tactics are small and repeated actions, right? So all of them are relevant to work. It's just like, how frequently do you refer to them, and where do you use them? So I try to have equal focus on strategy when a lot of people don't even think about strategy at all. And I think that is a blind spot for a lot of people, because making the right decision here can actually make up for a lot of weakness in other respects of your life. So I really like that framing of strategies versus tactics. Yeah, so for me, it's about, how do I apply this? I apply this in terms of picking technologies to work with, right? Just understanding what's out there, and then like saying like, okay, these 2 or 3 seem very popular. Let's go evaluate them deeper, and then actually betting on them. But then also picking startups to work with, right? So hoping that, for example, I will join at this stage, and once I join and be around for the growth of the stage, which hopefully also reflects the increase in the valuation of the startup. So that's why a lot of ways I pitch myself to people is like, I try to help developer tools companies cross the chasm. Yeah, Jose.
I wanted to hear your thoughts. Like, I know you've spoken about how you thought about temporal. At least I think I heard it. I was listening to a podcast you were invited to. But like, yep. Were you considering any other, like, I don't know how to call it, like, I mean, yeah, like temporal is a workflow engine, and you thought, hey, there's definitely a gap here, and this company is filling it. But like, how, like, did you evaluate different types of, I don't know what to call them, frameworks or tools? Or were you already said like, the gap is here, like I'm gonna look for a company that does this kind of thing?
I did not look for that. They looked for me.
Oh yeah, good point. Yeah, they contacted you.
Yeah, so here's the history, right? And so this one was lucky. This one was more like you
like
learn.
They saw your post and they contacted you.
Exactly. Let me show you the post.
So this was more like they just like, you evaluated them and it was a check mark. Like, okay, hey, these guys are filling a gap, and like the product is definitely like going to go somewhere. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So I wrote this post about the things I was struggling with in cloud, and particularly like I felt like there was something missing in serverless. So I looked through all the jobs to be done of serverless platforms, and I realized that one of the jobs that were not being done well was job running, the long running compute. And then there were a bunch of replies. Basically, this guy eventually got hired to be head of product at Temporal, and then he referred me into Temporal as well, because like these are just all the replies that were all going back and forth between people, but also there were VCs reading this, and so once they read, like, people like all in the same headspace, like looking for the same thing, they were like, okay, you're a good match. They like philosophically, like we all just like resonate on like trying to improve this technology. And we didn't know the shape of it. In fact, like he always makes fun of himself as saying like he actually was trying to argue that it was not possible, and now he works on the technology full time. So yeah, I mean, for me, this is just a pure. There was no strategy in this so much as
This isn't a lesson on strategy,
think.
more on the learning in public lesson.
Yes, and creating luck. Creating luck, right? Like, how can you maximize your luck surface area such that these kinds of things just have more chance of happening to you than others, right? Which is very much like, you can view yourself as not lucky, but if you do more things and tell more people about it, you just maximize the opportunities for people to find you. And this one, like I didn't even put it on my blog. It's still a GitHub gist because I was so rough about it. I was just like, I don't have confidence in this thing. I'm just gonna put it as a gist. But even
where
then,
did you publish this? Like, do people find this randomly?
I tweeted about it, and it wasn't even that big. It got like 56 likes. I mean, it wasn't. But yeah, that was it.
Working process. Yeah, blog post. Got it.
Yeah. Yep.
Nice.
So I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't think like this is not repeatable. But it's just how random luck happens, right? For you, it might happen some other way. But as long as you increase your luck surface area, like it's more likely to happen than not. That's the only thing I can say. I cannot guarantee that lucky things happen, but I can say at least there's ways to improve your luck. Focusing on, so for me as well. So I think there's, so I go through the 4 kinds of luck that people talk about with Mark Andreessen and Naval Ravikant. But that's where I start differing from other people who think about luck, is that you want to have more strategy component as well as good habits for making luck happen. So the strategy component is very relevant to here, right? Like if your focus is on, if you have a good understanding of the ecosystem, if you have high strategic awareness and you understand like, here are the parts that are commoditized and hey, job running is not commoditized and it is about to become something that everybody custom builds. It's about to become something that's productized and everyone is going to recognize that they want something like that, then that is a valuable place to be. And then you can start creating luck around that. Something like that. And that would be the backwards rationalization of what happens. Anyway, so like just as a baseline, understanding strategic positioning is important. And hopefully this is a really good guide. Cool. Cesar.
Yes, I have been thinking about strategy in terms of I'm currently mentoring somebody who is like trying to make a career switch to code, to tech, and I'm wondering if at this point, because like he's currently just like going through like learning to code, like book, learning Python and so on. And I'm thinking, at what point would this be relevant to pass along, or at least kind of inform somebody? Because like I can imagine, like first when you try to like learn to code, you just want to just get a job, just find somewhere, like just find a company or something.
Yeah.
And only then you would probably start thinking in a more general way about how to be more strategic about what you're learning, about what like choices you make in terms of like company progression and so on. I'm just wondering, yeah, what would be your thoughts about, like, would it be something also to start thinking about as early as possible, or is it something that could be more useful later on?
I think, obviously people should be try to be as self-sufficient as possible. Like, try to have a job, be proficient. To me, it's not about having a job. It's more about like, can you ship or do whatever you want to do? Like, do you have the technical competence to do that? And once you can do whatever you want to do, then it's a more of a matter of figuring out what you want to do, right? Which is the strategy piece. But yeah, you can separate it. For me, it always is linked, partially because of my investing background, but also it's more motivating for me to understand what I'm playing for, what I'm working so hard towards. So I think it's always a back and forth thing. Like, if they want, they can read all this stuff. You can send them links or whatever. They can get the book, but they can just kind of browse it through in 1 year, and then like, okay, very theoretical. I don't really get it. but then 5 years down the road, they read it again and they're like, okay, no, I'm thinking about this every day.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, that's the nature of a book. And that's the nature of like, that's why I like having sort of one-time purchase deals, because people drop in and out and a career is very long. And sometimes you have to be reintroduced to ideas multiple times over the course of many years for it to really stick. So, yeah, I mean, I agree. Less important when they're just changing careers. I definitely didn't think that much about this.
Thanks.
Cool. All right, megatrends. DALL-E is a megatrend. GPT-3 is definitely a megatrend. I don't even think it had an example of. I didn't have an example of this when I wrote the book. But I gave some easy definition of megatrends. So essentially, why do I care about megatrends? And why is it different from normal trends? There's a criticism of tech where tech is very fad driven, like, and people jump around a lot from like the current hottest thing to, like, I was looking at GraphQL recently, actually this morning. Let me show you the GraphQL numbers. So GraphQL used to be super hot. Let me show you how GraphQL looks like 5 years ago. Okay, this is the Hacker News search algorithm, by the way, and it by default it ranks all the stories for you, so it looks pretty easy to do. All right, so let's see. So 6 years ago, so 7 years ago, GraphQL was open sourced by Facebook. 6 years ago, it was adopted by GitHub as its new API, like version 4 API. A bunch of people were uploading a lot of ecosystem projects 6 years ago. So there's this project, there was this Hacker News clone, there's GraphCool, which became Prisma. There was the GraphQL Foundation 4 years ago. It's just very, very hot. Just everything GraphQL was being uploaded. Like even this guy with like super complicated web stack that is no longer around was getting so many upvotes. John Resig, the creator of jQuery, or was he a creator of jQuery? I think he was.
Yeah.
Wrote a book about GraphQL. He was like, not my thing now is GraphQL, is not jQuery anymore. Anyway, so it was so hot a few years ago, and then now, these are the metrics that are like nobody cares about it now. It's pretty sad. So I looked at, let's see, GraphQL. This is the monthly mentions of GraphQL, right? So 2015 it was open source all the way up to 2020, and then it kind of stagnated on Stack Overflow, and then the views are just kind of dying. No one's really using it anymore. So this would be an example of something that was a trend that did not manage to cross the chasm into a mega trend. It got somewhere and then it kind of died off. Maybe it's not died off for good, right? But it has a lot of work to do to recover its momentum. And whoever bet heavily on GraphQL in 2017, 18, 19. And by the way, like some of these people are running companies and raised venture capital money on that kind of thesis. They're struggling now, which is very hard pill to swallow. Anyway, so that's why I care. Like, can you get a megatrend that's credibly going to do get all the way down this curve, or is it going to go here and then stall and then fail? So that is for me the real question, because then it means that you also don't have to bet so early, right? If you just focus on megatrends, then you can say like I can be here rather than here, and spare myself some pain of betting on the wrong thing. Because as long as I can see some indicators that it will finish that hurdle, then I think you just specialize in jumping on earlier than others, and I think you sort of benefit from riding that wave. So my best definition about it is order of magnitude of population percentages. So what does that mean? It means like every single year you're going from 1% market share to 3% to 5% to like something very massive in terms of population market share. I'm not talking about growth rate. So this is very different from, a lot of people will say like, oh, I'm growing like 10% month on month, or I'm growing 100% a year. That's fine, but like, are you significantly capturing the population? And is it going to go all the way to 70%, 80% population market capture? So that's a really good measure of population capture. The leading indicators of that is double-digit growth. So the really safe version of that is double-digit growth in population adoption, and something that has gone on for multiple years, double-digit years, maybe 10 years, which means like if it's been a thing for a long time, it's more likely to be a thing going forward as well. So that's kind of what people call the Lindy effect. So yeah, I gave a bunch of definition examples here as well, like, and having a thesis of like the generational shift. So for example, one part of the third age of JavaScript thesis is why are all these things, let me show you, why are all these things being built out that did not exist 10 years ago, right? That was, let me see if I can show you the chart here, right? So why is it that there was more standardization done in the first age of JavaScript? Why is it that there was more build tooling done in the second age of JavaScript? And then what's going to be built in the third age? And it's really just like different groups of people. So that's why I call it a generational shift. Like you want to, when you first jump on the scene, you're hungry, you want to make your mark. So you work on this layer of tooling. And the second age, the next group of people come in, the next generation comes in and looks at what you've done, and they're like, okay, yep, that's the way things should be, and they build on top of that, right? So it's just generational people, and then these people will retire or like they get promoted past the point of coding, and then you have new people coming in trying to make their mark as well. So that's one thing that really appeals to me, like the understanding of not just the numbers going up, but why are they going up? And having a strong thesis of that, and having like really good proof points, like constantly checking your assumptions of like, okay, is this true? Like, are you saying that people of this cohort, whether it's by age or by number of years experience or whatever, is this cohort just like significantly higher in adoption? So one example, one way of doing this is, for example, saying how much time people spend on video format versus text format, and you can see that the younger generation definitely spends more time on video. So another version of this is like cloud computing, right? How much time are people spending on Chromebooks versus traditional laptops, or mobile phones versus traditional laptops or desktops? You can definitely see like generational shifts there, and it's just over time that you can just safely assume that the younger generation are living in the future, and they'll probably propagate up as much as they personally age up in their own lives. So these are like interesting megatrends that I would probably mention. Concrete example of another one with the population percentage thing is TypeScript. That has really gone from like, let's say low tens in market share when I started in JavaScript, now to something like 70-80%, at least in surveys. So that is a huge megatrend, which means it makes it very safe to bet on. Cool. Yeah, I gave more examples here. Chad.
So one of the things that I always kind of had an issue from reading the book was kind of trying to figure out what megatrends look like. And I mean, this kind of talk has really helped. I wanted to ask, especially since you mentioned TypeScript, does it make sense or not? Does it make sense? Would you benefit from kind of looking at other megatrends and how they kind of evolve to kind of figure out what I don't want to say necessarily the life cycle, but what at the very least it looks like from a fundamental level to kind of be able to identify other megatrends?
You should always try to have a fundamental theory for why things are happening the way they are. But sometimes you can just invest blind. You can just go like, all right, there's something here and I don't know what it is, and just do that. So one very famous example of that is Jeff Bezos, his sort of Amazon quote. Do you know how he started Amazon? Or,
I personally don't know.
So for him, this was his megatrend that really got him to quit. Like he didn't know what he was going to work on, but he was working in a hedge fund, not private equity. But he heard this statistic that the internet was growing 2,300% a year, and he was like, anything that's growing that fast is just going to be a thing. And so he, just based on that, he was like, all right, I'm obsessed by this thing. Let's go figure out what's the most ideal business model. And for him, it was books. But it started with the Megatrend factor. He said this multiple times in his interviews. I forget where it is, but yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's just so he just kind of had that one kind of piece of information. He's just like, I just need to figure out how to leverage this, and away he went. That was pretty much it.
I think this is the interview that everybody found, which is pretty cool. This is him in 1997 talking about it, and yeah, it really proves like this is not hindsight. This is literally how he was thinking. So.
Hi there, who are you?
I'm Jeff Bezos.
And what is your claim to fame?
I'm the founder of Amazon.com.
Where did you get an idea for Amazon.com?
Well, 3 years ago, I was in New York City working for a quantitative hedge fund when I came across the startling statistic that web usage was growing at 2,300% a year. So I decided I would try and find a business plan that made sense in the context of that growth. And I picked books as the first best product to sell online, which are making a list of like 20 different products that you might be able to sell. And books were great as the first best because books are incredibly unusual in one respect, and that is that there are more items in the book category than there are items in any other category by far. Music is number 2. There are about 200,000 active music CDs at any given time. But in the book space, there are more than 3 million different books worldwide active and in print at any given time across all languages. More than 1.5 million in English alone. And so when you have that many items, you can literally build a store online that couldn't exist any other way. And that's important right now because the web is still an infant technology. Basically right now, if you can do things using a more traditional method, you probably should do them using the more traditional method.
What kind of inventory do you keep?
So yeah, I mean, you can't make that up, right? Like that was 1997. He was talking about this. And he wasn't like a book lover or anything. He didn't have like a family business running books or something like that. It was very, very calculated. Like, holy shit, the web is a thing. Let's try and find a business model.
So it's just pretty much do the same thing, but now best as you can.
Yeah, and it's always hard, right? Because he's the one of them that got lucky and he was right. But imagine if you bet huge on something that turned out to be wrong. You should be able to figure out if you're wrong, by the way. Like, so I don't think it's that risky, to be honest. But still, I mean, obviously this was one of the biggest wins ever. So Steph Smith actually did an exercise. So did I share this video already? I still think it's a really like I'm very obsessed by these sort of original source documents, right? Like it's not people making stuff up after the fact. They are really explaining the thought process in time. So Steph Smith is a writer. I think she works for Andreessen Horowitz now. So what are the other generation defining stats of today? And it's pretty recent, 2022. So she was like, cost of mapping a genome falling a lot. This is falling faster than Moore's law of the Human Genome Project in 2000 all the way down to where we are today. College tuition, another megatrend that hopefully is changing. I did see a slowdown in college tuition, at least during COVID. Cybersecurity. The sex recession is also very fun. A lot of people don't talk about that enough. Semiconductor workers and the skill gap and the shortage. Sleep. Yeah. Anyway, there's a lot of really interesting megatrends that she's curated. So I'll just post it in the chat. She is not technical though, so she doesn't talk about programming frameworks or the cloud or like developer productivity tools, anything like that. But you can kind of go similar, right? So for my space, the data space that I've entered, the big stat that everyone talks about is Snowflake's growth, like that they are making $1 billion a year and still growing at 100% a year. In other words, like the data warehouse space is just exploding, and hopefully that will be a megatrend for many more years to come. Cool. All right.
You mentioned the source material, Sean. I sent you a link. That site is awesome. The memos are like everything from Starbucks CEO talking about like store experience, Mark Zuckerberg talking about Messenger and how it would play out. Like, it's insane.
Yeah, I will highlight the YouTube thesis for people. So imagine what it's like to invest very, very early in YouTube when all the competitors look like this. YouTube was about maybe four or 5 months old. And all the competitors was Dailymotion, Vimeo, Flickr, Webshots, Google search, video search. So how much do you pay attention to this in terms of not only the megatrend of is our video websites worth anything, but to invest so early on the right horse? So this is one of the this is like a 9-page memo that made a few $1 billion. So yeah, I will highlight the YouTube memo. There's other memos out here. Let me see what else is interesting. I've read a lot of these just as a part of investing.
So this might derail the conversation a little bit, but you mentioned you should know when you're wrong. Could you elaborate more on that?
Oh yeah, when you find out for example, sometimes it's a bullshit statistic, right? Sometimes if everybody says 2,300% a year, and you're like, and you get involved in the internet and you look around and you're like, oh, okay, but these are made up numbers because of some reason, right? Like everyone's like faking these statistics. They're all robots, or the numbers are very low, and this 2,300 magically, like once you account for all the factors, it just drops to like 20. Then you know you're wrong. So you should be able to find out pretty quickly once you commit to something, right? But these are just like the signals for you to start paying attention. That's all. But once you get deeper, you can really find out like, oh, okay, there's still a lot of holes. For example, like the early internet, I'm sure it had a lot of criticism, right? Like a lot of criticism about like the maturity of the technology, the reliability of the technology, the cost of the technology. All these things are always valid criticisms, but they all improve over time. The question for you as an early adopter is, are they sort of deal breakers, or can they be fixed with time? And if they're deal breakers, then you want to peace out as soon as possible. Yeah, keep an inventory. Omar asked, what are my thoughts on crypto? I think crypto has definitely proven itself that it's going to be around. If it's this is called kind of the cockroach theory. Jason Calacanis has this idea of cockroach. Yeah, he doesn't talk. He talks about this in some of his podcasts, which is basically when something is supposed to have died multiple times and it keeps not dying, that is a very good sign that it's going to be around for a very, very long time. So he talks about this in some of his podcasts. I can't find a canonical link for it, but crypto is supposed to have died a few times already. And every time there's a crypto winter, it keeps coming back stronger. It just tells you that there's something here. A lot of the use cases are really pointless and quite amateurish, but that's what it's like to be early, because people, the only people playing around in this field are the really hopeful dreamers who don't know anything yet. And by the time it's obvious, by the time people have worked out what the right best practice is, it will be too late for you. So either you join early or you kind of sit it out. But we'll see. I mean, which means like, why am I not joining crypto today? It's just because I don't like the culture. I think there's a lot of reasons why you join an industry or join a job or join a company, and one of them just can be you just don't like what they stand for, or like the way that they conduct themselves, and that's totally fine. There's plenty of ways to make money out there. So I'm not anti-crypto. I'm just kind of watching from the sidelines. I don't know. What do people feel? Do people have strong views on crypto stuff? This tends to draw strong opinions.
So my opinion is sort of ranty, but I want crypto to win, then because the idea and the ideas of it it would be the best thing next to democracy, I think, or maybe even better than democracy, where it's not controlled by any self-interest. So I want crypto to win, but the current way, I think they have lost many of the same VCs have lost the original. So they used to say this is a toy, and then whenever there's a new technology that comes out, right, they say, oh, this is a toy that people play with, and then others find it easier, find it useful, and it gets adoption. I think in this case, they put too much emphasis on finance first, than making it fun and useful. So there is absolutely no use for crypto at the moment. They're just, everyone in the space is, there's too much, they're talking too much about making money first than making it useful, right? And it's just why I'm sitting out as well. Like I have a little bit of Bitcoin, but that's mostly to say, I'm just going to hold it forever, irrespective of how expensive it gets, and then just, you know, hand it over to my son, either as here's something that we were playing with in our age, and either it doesn't exist anymore, or maybe like, here you go, you're rich, like one way or another, like
Right, exactly.
It's sort of right.
Own one of the 21 million Bitcoins, and
Either he gets it that way, or it's like this is the stupidity we were doing, like when I was younger, you know, one way or another, it'll be a relic of our time, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Right. But it's not useful. And also, for crypto, I'd say, someday also, you don't have to take on every trend. Let's say crypto wins, right? And you sit out, crypto wins. It's still great. You can get in later. Like you didn't have to invest in dollar 50 years ago to use dollars today. Dollars is successful. You can make dollars today. If Bitcoin ends up being successful, you can get in when it's successful. You don't have to jump on the trend, right? Like that's what people who want to make money, take your money will say. So don't have to jump on the trend. Like let crypto win, it's still good for you. You can jump on it later. Right.
Yeah, there's something I also mentioned in the last part of the chapter, which is it often, even trend watchers often underestimate the sheer scale of a mega trend. What makes it mega is it's bigger than you can possibly think. So I have some really good examples which I love. Tim Sweeney started Epic Games in 1991, and he was like, "Yeah, I feel like it's a bit too late." And, and now he has Unreal Engine and Fortnite. Mark Andreessen also moved to Silicon Valley in 1984. He was like, "I'd already missed it." Then he ended up, you know, owning Silicon Valley. Same for the Instagram guys. Same for the YouTube guys. So it's normal to feel late, and sometimes like what makes it mega trend like is that there's just always more time. Like even if like 10 years have passed, like it's fine. It's still pretty early. So
and also we are in the entire crypto thing developed in a low interest rate environment. So we'll have to see how if people will ever put money into it when the interest rates go up. We have not seen that happen at all. Like, so we will watch in the next few years what happens.
We'll see. Yeah. Jose, you had a closing thought?
Yeah, no, like what from the past talk about finance and this one, like what I've gotten is that you're basically like managing risk as an investor in your career. And the whole thing about segmenting the technologies is that you sort of like, you have to pick where you're going to be an innovator, because in most stuff you should probably stay on the sideline and just like, hey, TypeScript 80%, I'm going to be part of the 81st, like done. I'm not even going to think about it. But for the stuff you really care about, and I guess this is where preferences come in, like based on what Sean said, like if you're really passionate about what crypto stands for, then you move it to I'm going to try to innovate in that, and like you pay more attention and you start making calculated risks. But I guess it's about picking. Like for me, crypto, like the only thing we have now that we didn't have is that we can actually like run a program in a server none of us controls. I think that's like the actual innovation. But besides that, everything else is bullshit. But that primitive is going to lead to a lot of new systems and hopefully better democracy.
I mean, crypto itself is very interesting, right? You say, like, if I tell my mom, I'm like, here's a key that I will sign this thing with, and you can open it with a different key, and you don't have to talk to each other. Even that itself is the basic public-private key is magic to a non-technical user, right? It's even to a technical user, it's magic.
For me, what blew my mind was like the proof of existence is genius. Like I can post something that lets you know that I knew something in the past, and I don't have to reveal what that is until later in the future.
Yes.
I thought that was like.
And so for what it's worth, that was the original utility. But I think the people in crypto would point to zero knowledge proofs as like the next frontier in that kind of proofing environment, which is sort of more privacy focused and also very expensive, but still, a new primitive that hopefully will be a lot cheaper in 10, 20 years. Cool. All right. Well, it's awesome to think about. Definitely more from an investment point of view than from like a crypto point of view. But yeah, cool. Anyway, I love talking about this. I think that it's hard to have conversations about this because it's just not normal to talk about strategy stuff. And so hopefully this community can be a forum where you can say like, I'm thinking about this other investment through this framework that we talked about, with the standard reading of strategy stuff. And I'm always open to discussions on that because I'm quite interested in building out my own expertise on that. All right, Chad.
No, just one quick thing before you go. Like, you say that strategy is just not the conversation that generally comes up. What generally is the conversation? Just
money. What's your total comp? Like the most popular posts is like blind.com, right? Or where people talk about their total comp or GTFO, and it's always about the near-term optimization of like what is this? Oh, okay, it's teamblind.com. So people really like to talk about comp. People really like to talk about layoffs and dating your manager or whatever. But like, there's no strategy here. There's no like, am I betting my career on crypto or whatever? So yeah, Jose, what's up?
No, just to chip in, because like this is what has kept me coming to these talks, because like I feel like what's regularly spoken about is the first half of the book. It's like, hey, how do you get a job? How do you get paid more? How do you go from junior to senior? Like that kind of stuff. But this is like really different from the rest of the stuff that's spoken about, and it's like the intersection of like being an investor and being a developer. Like most people don't think about, like, this is pretty advanced both for a developer and both for an investor, because you normally don't have the development context that Sean has.
Well, I mean,
so, it's pretty cool.
Well, so I mean, you have a background in finance as well, so you'll probably also appreciate it. So for I think I said this when Jose first joined, but so in case, just to remind people, I actually went to school with Jose, so we know each other from.
I'm a convert too. I was in the dark side and realized I mean, it sounds bogus now to say that like I turned into a developer, because I've been working as a developer for the past like 13 years. But yeah, really? I started out thinking about finance and just like this better.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, I want to bring it to a close. We are going to, so we have come to the end of the strategy section, and we can still talk about it, of course. I like to keep it improvisational and free flowing. But if we don't have any other topics, we'll start in the tactics chapters and then try to finish up the book.
What's the schedule like?
Have a break.
Do you assign like 1 or 2 chapters per week, or
1 or 2 chapters a week? As long as you sign up on the Luma invite, you'll get a notification of which chapter it is that day. So for today, it was chapter 28, 29, and then next one I'll be assigning chapter 31. Probably just 31 if we're just talking about negotiation. But sometimes we just completely pivot the topic based on whatever people are interested, right? So sometimes I might be like, okay, everyone is talking about conference speaking today, so let's go straight to that. It's more important that we talk about whatever we feel like talking about than the assigned chapter. So cool, right? Well, we'll cover tactics next week, and if you want to follow up on strategy stuff, we can always talk in Discord. But thanks so much. This is fun. Bye, everyone.
Yeah.